Hi guys, and welcome to day 10 of 12 days of chiropractic. So far we've covered a lot of content, and early on there was pretty heavy going. We talked about stress, understanding its effects, then we discussed the different types. We've given you tips along the way for dealing with it for the now and the immediate future through the Christmas festive season, and we've also given you some tips going forward. We've also discussed our values and finding out what's really important to us. But the reason you're here, the reason you're watching these videos in the first place is either you're a practice member of Revive Chiropractic under Vanessa's care, or a family member is a practice member. So one of the things that's really essential for us is to understand, why is chiropractic practice, and as chiropractors, are we trying to share these messages? They don't seem to be directly or anything about chiropractic. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to give you a good understanding of what chiropractic actually is, and why it is associated with the things we've previously talked about. So there are 5 premises to chiropractic. The first one we need to understand is that the body is self-regulating and it's self-healing. By that we mean that in terms of regulation, we've talked about this in terms of the stress response. You know, if we go for a run, our heart rate goes up, our respiratory rate goes up. And then when we finish, what happens? It lowers itself down. Your heart rate comes back down, your respiratory rate returns to a more normal for you. Now we don't think about that, it just self-regulates. Self-healing is a similar type of thing. If I was to cut my arm, and it was started to bleed, platelets would start to form. There'd be a scab formation, and then after the scab had done what it needed to do, it would fall away, and the skin would be left looking as it was previously. And throughout that healing process, the body has done it itself. I haven't spent any time consciously thinking about that. So the reason we're sharing that first point, which may seem pretty self-obvious, is that the body is very smart. It knows what to do and when to do it. The second point we're going to cover is that the thing that regulates all that is the brain and nervous system. So we have the brain up in our skull, comes down, the spinal cord comes down between the bones of our back, and we have peripheral nerves that spread out from the spinal cord. And they supply every cell, tissue, organ, gland, muscle of the body. And there are messages going to the brain and from the bone. This is a continual loop of information. And when it's functioning well, it allows us to be the best that we can be. The third point is this. If there was interference to that nervous system, if there was a break in the loop, what would happen to us? Well, our bodies would no longer be optimally self-healing and self-regulating. The message that's going back to the brain may be a bit too high input or too low. And the message coming out is going to be altered as well. We call that interference a subluxation, where there's a misalignment of the spine, the bones in your back, causing a joint dysfunction, whether it's restricted movement or too much movement. And involved in that, there's also a nervous system or a neural component where the messages are affected as well. So subluxation has both a joint and bony component as well as a nervous system component. Now, the reason we want to talk about that is if these subluxations are left for a long period of time, they become like chronic stressor. And we've talked about chronic stress in the earlier videos. And we talked about chronic stress can have quite devastating effects. So let's say that we've got a subluxation and it's affecting our nervous system. So what are going to be the effects? Well, the messages going to the body and coming back are always going to be altered. So the message coming out isn't going to be quite what we would like it to be. So we can no longer be the best we can be. And left for long periods of time, it becomes more difficult, like any chronic problem, to recorrect. So this is where chiropractors come in. And I've just laid all the foundations as to why you come in as a chiropractic patient and why you come regularly for care and why your family come regularly for care. Our job as a chiropractor is to analyse your spine. Our job is to locate any subluxations. And then our next job is to correct those subluxations and ensure that you are doing things to stop them coming back as often. And this is why we've shared all the other information previously about stress. So understanding that what you eat causes stress on the body, understanding what you think, understanding how you move affects the body. So I hope now you have a greater understanding of what chiropractic is and what chiropractic does. Tomorrow we're going to discuss more about the subluxation and how that comes about. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we look very much forward to speaking to you tomorrow. Thanks again.